What if I told you that the most beloved horse in all of Red Dead 2 may actually be the bearer of a curse that almost no one noticed? An animal that most players see as a loyal companion, a gift from an old friend. But when we start connecting the dots, it seems to carry a trail of bad luck and tragedy wherever it goes. His name is Buell. This golden warmblood that many consider the best horse in the entire game is linked to a forgotten veteran in the mountains, crossing paths with Arthur Morgan at a particularly sensitive moment in the story, also curiously connecting to John Marston's journey, always present, always silent, as if orbiting great destinies without anyone noticing. Today we will investigate this theory and try to understand if Buell is just an excellent horse, or if there is something more sinister behind him. And for that we need to go back to the beginning in Chapter 6, when Arthur meets an aged soldier on the road in Ambarino, Hamish Sinclair. But starting from the beginning, our first contact with Buell happens during Chapter 6, when we meet a war veteran named Hamish Sinclair. He is abandoned on the side of a road in the state of Ambarino, surrounded by twisted pine trees and the cold wind of the mountains. Bearing a prosthesis on his left leg, the old man ended up there because his horse, Buell, got scared by a predator on the road and bolted, taking with it the wooden leg attached to the saddle. Hamish was left behind, lying on the ground, completely unable to move, and with no other option, he asks Arthur to retrieve the horse, and with it, his leg.
My goddamn horse got spooked and run off.
Are you hurt?
Not too bad, at least. But he took my damn leg.
Sorry.
He went that way, I think. His name's Buell.
Buell?
Second time a prick named Buell cost me a leg.
Huh?
Buell was my general when I lost it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, if you see an angry bastard of a horse with my wooden leg, I'd be real grateful.
I'll bear that in mind.
After a brief dialogue, Arthur sets off and finds the horse further ahead at O'Cree's Run Lake, and despite having just knocked down its owner and run away, Buell is surprisingly calm on the lake shore, enjoying the dense pasture of the mountainous region as if nothing had happened. As we approach, we meet a horse that is certainly one of the most beautiful and imposing in the entire game. He is of the Dutch warmblood breed, known for its imposing size, strength, and above all, stubbornness. We come across various variations of this breed throughout the story. The first of them, in fact, at Valentine's stable with Hosea. But Buell doesn't stand out just because of his golden caramel coat, as he is also, in terms of mechanics, the best representative of his breed. He is the best Dutch warmblood when it comes to health, speed, and stamina, as if he were the ultimate version of that archetype of a sturdy and reliable horse. And after calming him down for a few moments, Arthur takes his reins and leads him back to Hamish. With a horse once again reunited with its owner, the mission comes to an end, and Arthur leaves having achieved something rare in the life of an outlaw. Perhaps for the first time, a friend with no connection to the Van der Linde gang. Despite the curious context in which the veteran finds himself in this mission, what stands out the most in this encounter are the dialogues. The first one occurs during the initial conversation, when Hamish reveals a very interesting coincidence between his horse and an old acquaintance.
His name's Buell.
Buell?
Second time a prick named Buell cost me a leg.
Huh?
Buell was my general when I lost it.
Oh, okay.
As we can see, strangely enough, Hamish named his horse after the former general he served under, Buell. It's a rather peculiar choice, considering that, as the veteran himself mentions, this man cost him a leg in combat. This happened during the American Civil War, which took place 34 years before the events of the story. In one of the battles, Hamish was shot in the leg by a cannonball. Since then, he has been living with a prosthetic, struggling to adapt to this new reality. Hamish blames his former general, as in his view it was some miscalculated order from the officer that put him in that situation, amidst enemy fire and heavy artillery. Finally, another noteworthy dialogue occurs in the final cutscene of the mission, where during the conversation Hamish praises Buell but makes a rather curious observation.
You're a good man, Mr.
Arthur. You're right. He's a brute.
Hamish Sinclair. Yeah, he's a great horse, aside from when the devil got him. Hey, you wanna hand me that leg there, please?
As stated by the veteran, Buell is a great horse, except when the devil possesses him. At first, this phrase may simply go unnoticed by the player, sounding more like a figure of speech from an old grump. But when we take a closer look at everything that happens around this horse, this statement starts to sound almost like a warning. This is exactly where the door opens to a disturbing yet fascinating theory about Buell. The idea that this animal so loved by the community carries a kind of curse. A horse that curiously is one of the favorites among players precisely because it is one of the few in the entire map that seems to have its own story, a biography marked by blood, war, and misfortune. To understand this theory, we need to revisit the fourth and final mission of the veteran. In it, Arthur and Hamish set out together to hunt the infamous legendary boar, a grandiose, violent, lethal animal that seems to condense all the savagery of that territory. At a certain point in the hunt, the duo decides to split up to try to corner the creature. It is then that things start to go awry. Hamish ends up isolated in a narrow valley, and the boar finds him first. The animal fiercely chases him through the open field, as if it had chosen that old soldier as a personal target, until the moment it finally manages to attack him. When we arrive at the scene, the sight is one of pure despair. We find Hamish on the brink of death next to Buell, severely injured by the attack of the legendary animal. The veteran's body is mangled, blood covering the grass, and the silence of the mountains only broken by the wheezing breath of a man who knows he won't make it out alive. And yet, in his final moments, Hamish's concern is not for some distant relative or an old love left behind. What occupies his thoughts is the horse. The old soldier who survived war, the cold of the mountains, and loneliness, decides to use his last breaths to make a single request to Arthur.
I got thrown and a bastard hog got me. Take Buell for me, would you? He's a good horse. He may be stubborn, but he's strong.
But for our theory, the key point is not just Hamish's death itself, but the context in which it happens. Right at the beginning of his final words, he reveals that he was thrown off the horse. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, once again a being named Buell cost Hamish Sinclair something fundamental. In the past, a general named Buell took his leg in the midst of the chaos of the Civil War. Now, decades later, a horse named Buell took something even more precious from him, his very life. Few people stop to think about it, but Hamish Sinclair didn't die simply because of the giant boar. He died because Buell knocked him down at the worst possible moment, leaving the veteran vulnerable to the attack. The boar just did what its nature dictates. It saw a defenseless prey and finished the job. The most disturbing thing of all is that the more we look at this picture, the harder it becomes to see the scene as a mere fatality. The impression left is that the man riding Buell was not just a victim of chance, but a piece of something much bigger, almost as if he was trapped in a cursed fate tied to the reins of that horse. Everyone who rides Hamish's Dutch Warmblood seems to carry a tragic destiny. Sooner or later, the rider is doomed to face a tragic death up close. Proof of this is that if Arthur takes in Buell during Chapter 6, the horse is once again involved in a context of blood and farewell. This is because during the mission Red Dead Redemption, it is not only the protagonist who reaches the end of the line, his mount also falls. Arthur, already consumed by illness and internal gang conflicts, tries one last desperate escape, and in the midst of this chaos, the horse that accompanies him makes its final sacrifice. In other words, if Buell is with Arthur at that moment, he dies along with his rider. The gift left by a lonely veteran ends up falling on the same ground where the outlaw who tried in some way to find redemption fell. However, things aren't much different if Arthur doesn't inherit Buell in 1899. Many players, myself included, prefer to leave the veteran's fourth and final mission to John. This way, we can use Buell throughout the epilogue that takes place years after the main events of the story in 1907. John takes over the horse, lives his new life in Beecher's Hope, and for a brief period, he finally seems to have found a little peace alongside his family. But even in this scenario, the fate of the man who rides Buell remains tragic. About 4 years after the events of the epilogue, in 1911, John Marston is cruelly betrayed by Edgar Ross, having his life taken during the mission in which he is killed. The hero we follow in Red Dead 1 is shot dead at the door of his own barn in front of his family in a scene that has become one of the most iconic in the entire franchise. And even though the cursed horse is not present, there is a curious coincidence that refers to it. In addition to Ross and the federal agents, the American army is also present at the ranch, with their ranks aligned and rifles pointed. The same army that decades later during the American Civil War welcomed a young soldier named Hamish Sinclair and placed him under the command of the infamous General Buell. Thus, the life of Hamish, the death of Arthur, and the end of John seem to align around the same axis: a name, a general, a horse, and a thread of tragedy that follows everyone who in some way crosses paths with Buell. When we put all these pieces together, Buell stops being just a great horse that the devil sometimes possesses and starts to seem almost like a thread of tragedies. A name that starts in the bloody mud of the Civil War, goes through Hamish's severed leg, falls alongside Arthur on the mountain, and echoes years later in the shots that pierce John Marston at the barn door. It's no small thing for a single animal in a world already so accustomed to loss and violence. Of course, looking at it coldly, we could say that all of this is just a coincidence. Rockstar loves parallels, ironies and small mirrors scattered across the map, and Buell would just be one of those well-tied details. A legendary horse linked to a forgotten veteran who by chance crosses paths with two of the franchise's most tragic characters. No curse, no supernatural, just good writing and a cruel world that spares no one. But Red Dead 2 is not just a game based on facts. It also thrives on legends, whispers, stories told by the campfire, and theories that arise precisely from these strange coincidences. When a general named Buell takes the leg of a man, a horse named Buell takes his life, and all the important knights of this animal end up dead. It's hard not to look at this golden warm blood and feel that there's something wrong there, as if every step he takes carries a foreboding even though the game never says it out loud. In the end, perhaps the true curse of Buell is not just within the game, but within the minds of those who play. It is us who look at this horse and see more than just statistics, coat, and speed. We see a symbol, a reminder that in Red Dead, no matter how hard you try to escape, the reckoning always comes. And so I leave this decision in your hands. When you look at Buell, do you see only the best horse in its category in a hostile West, or do you also see in him the mark of a curse that haunts all who dared to hold his reins? Share your opinion in the comments and let's discuss. Like I mentioned before, a lot of people save the veteran mission for the epilogue just so they don't miss the chance to use Buell with John Marston. But what few know is that you can actually get this horse, capture elite horses without spending anything, and even tame a Missouri Foxtrotter, one of the best in the game. Want to know what are the 4 best horses in Red Dead Redemption 2 and how to get all of them completely for free? If you want to learn these methods step by step, click now on the yellow arrow, check out the complete guide. A big hug until next time.